6:38 a.m., Monday morning. The sun had just broken through. I was watering the front yard, something I'd done every day for 22 years during my service and 5 more since retirement. A soft breeze passed through the maple trees, carrying the smell of coffee from the porch. A peaceful suburban morning. Until I heard the soft click-click. It wasn't birds. It wasn't the garbage truck. It was the sound of a camera shutter. I turned my head, and there she was. Karen Simmons, meticulously dyed blonde hair, beige HOA uniform, one hand holding an iPad, the other clutching a notepad, standing at the edge of my driveway, taking photos of the American flag hanging from my porch, without saying a word. 14 minutes later, I got an email from the HOA board. Violation notice. National flag displayed in a manner inconsistent with community aesthetic standards. Please remove within 24 hours. I laughed. Thought it was a joke or maybe a mistake. Who in their right mind calls the American flag unaesthetic? Especially in a quiet southern suburb. But no, it was real. And it was just the beginning. Karen Simmons, the newly elected president of the Homeowners Association, had just declared a kind of war she wasn't equipped to fight. What she didn't know was this. I'm John Keller, a retired FBI special agent. I've investigated federal crimes, domestic espionage, and civil rights violations. I once signed off on a raid against a terrorist disguised as a regular guy in Kansas. I've argued face-to-face with senators on Capitol Hill when they tried to cover up breaches of federal law. And now I was up against an HOA Karen, armed with a khaki skirt and a grass-height measuring stick. She thought I was just some retired old man. But what she didn't realize is, I know how to file a constitutional lawsuit against a rogue HOA, from A to Z. I wasn't planning to fight her. I was planning to teach her a lesson that even the law couldn't ignore. And the bitter truth? This wasn't just about me. I was about to uncover that Karen had been silently erasing every sign of patriotism, every military emblem, every tribute to those who served this country, from the Willow Pines neighborhood. In silence, in fear, one fake violation notice at a time. And she had picked the wrong man to mess with. Have you ever been micromanaged by your HOA? Has anyone ever dared touch your American flag? Comment if you know how that feels. Stay tuned, because you're going to want to see what happens when Karen tries to rip down my flag with her bare hands and her arrogance. Willow Pines, a neighborhood that looks like paradise until you hang the wrong thing according to the HOA. Willow Pines. From the outside, it's the American dream, nestled in the heart of Georgia. Lawns trimmed like sheet music, flower beds blooming right on schedule, and every rooftop painted in the same shade of elegant gray. People greet each other over white picket fences and swap cookies on holidays. But in this very place, a woman with the title of HOA president turned the most sacred symbol, the American flag, into a visual offense. Her name is Karen Simmons, age 48. Self-proclaimed protector of community standards. In reality, a dictator disguised as an HOA leader. I met her for the first time at a neighborhood meeting 2 weeks after my wife and I moved in. She walked in like it was a catwalk audition for Desperate Housewives, HOA edition. Her eyes scanned the room like a barcode reader. She didn't shake a single hand, but she spoke first. We need to keep this community safe, aesthetic, and unified. Sounds nice enough. But her voice was cold as granite. It reminded me of people I'd interrogated during 2 decades at the FBI. I'm John Keller, 57 years old. I specialized in domestic counterintelligence, civil rights investigations, and national security. I've planted listening devices in apartments of men planning to sabotage federal facilities. I've blended into crowded churches to quietly track suspects without anyone ever noticing. But here, in Willow Pines, I was just the new old guy. The retired teacher's husband, the man at House 212 with the improperly placed flag. My wife, Linda, a retired school teacher who loves gardening and baking cinnamon waffles, chose this neighborhood thinking it would be peaceful and welcoming. She still believes people do the right thing for the sake of community. Me? I believe in the law and in evidence. After the flag incident, we started hearing whispers. One polite neighbor murmured, Karen doesn't like divisive symbols on porches. I raised an eyebrow. The American flag is divisive? What counts as unifying then? 3 days later, Karen sent violation notice number 2. This time, she claimed the flag was too large. I was flying a 3 by 5 foot flag, standard size, VA recommended, properly mounted and secured. But the issue wasn't the size, it was the fact that she didn't want to see it. I started digging, and I found out she had previously sent a warning to Mr. Brightow Henderson, a retired Marine, for placing a ceremonial rifle display on his lawn for Memorial Day. She also banned a Puerto Rican American couple from flying both the U.S. and their ancestral flag on the same pole. Every symbol tied to service, heritage, or sacrifice became a violation. Karen didn't hate the flag. Karen hated what it represented. Personal freedom, something she couldn't control. So I started documenting. Photographed letters, saved pictures of homes she targeted. Every time I saw her walking around with her measuring stick and iPad, I activated my remote cameras. I used to surveil terrorists. Now I was surveilling an HOA Karen. I told Linda, she thinks she's running this neighborhood, but she doesn't realize she just messed with a guy whose job was exposing abuse of power. Has your HOA ever tried to strip away your freedoms? Tell me in the comments. Stick around, because in the next chapter, Karen crosses a line you won't believe. She threatens to sue me for inciting national sentiment. Karen went full control mode and officially declared war on a former federal agent. You know what's funny? Karen didn't need a reason to control. She just needed the feeling that someone had challenged her. And nothing makes a Karen in HOA angry faster than someone who refuses to bow to her authority. The following week, I received 2 more violation letters, one for flying the flag outside of designated hours, according to a temporary policy update that no other resident had ever heard of. The second because the flagpole exceeded the community's harmonious aesthetic ratio. I measured it, 6 feet, 10 inches, exactly within National Residential Flag Display Guidelines. And then came the 4th letter. This one wasn't a warning anymore. Karen had hired a small-time law office and had them send me a formal threat. The allegation? That I was inciting extremist national sentiment within the community, fostering division, and might even be sued for visual terrorism. No joke, that was the exact wording, visual terrorism, for an American flag. I let out a dry laugh as I read it, the kind that echoes in a quiet living room. Linda, my wife, started crying. John, we just wanted a peaceful life. I squeezed her hand. I was peaceful, until peace got mistaken for weakness. I knew Karen's type. I'd interrogated people like her, people who used rules to hide their real agenda. They don't scream, they don't slam doors. They use pens and fake policies to destroy people, one line at a time. So I started digging deeper. I uncovered a series of internal HOA emails, public under open records laws. In them, Karen proposed standardizing porch symbols and removing potentially controversial elements given the polarized political climate. I discovered an African-American family was cited for displaying a Black Veterans Matter sign near their front door. An elderly Korean-American man was told to remove his nameplate in Hangul because it was too hard for native residents to read. A Mexican-American veteran was threatened with fines for painting his garage door deep red, which Karen claimed evoked aggression. Karen didn't just hate the U.S. flag. She hated anything that reflected personal identity, especially if it fell outside the template she controlled. And then she escalated. Karen launched random community inspections, which meant she personally went house to house, taking photos, measuring, documenting. One morning, I caught her standing on my lawn, measuring the distance from my flagpole to the sidewalk with a tape measure. I walked out. Looking for something in my yard, Karen? She didn't flinch, just looked up with a smug little smile, the kind people wear when they think they've caught you. Mr. Keller, if everyone starts expressing their individuality, we'll lose this community. I looked her straight in the eyes. No. If you kill personal freedom, then you've already lost the community. That night, I opened my laptop. I went to the official complaint portal of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, filed a complaint for discrimination and suppression of national symbols. I attached every violation letter, every photo, every video, all the evidence I'd gathered over the last 3 weeks. I also sent a copy to the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, and to 3 journalists I used to work with during my time in the Bureau. I wasn't alone, and I didn't need to raise my voice. I just needed truth and the law to do their job. What do you think? Can an HOA really ban the American flag? You're about to see Karen light the match under her own chair when she does the unthinkable. She sends someone to remove the American flag from my porch. I used to track interstate criminals. Karen, she was an elementary level case with all the evidence and one national flag on my side. I've launched investigations with less than a single sheet of paper, a receipt, a muffled recording, a panicked glance. But this time, after just 3 weeks living in Willow Pines, I had a full case file, 8 threatening emails from the HOA, 4 violation letters, none citing a specific bylaw, 1 video of Karen trespassing on private property, measuring illegally, 3 neighbor statements testifying to similar harassment against their families, and most valuable of all, the original HOA charter, which made no mention of any ban on flying the U.S. flag. Karen had lied, and now it was time to respond, the way 22 years in the FBI had taught me. I filed a formal complaint with HUD, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, citing the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. I also submitted a copy to the Georgia Veterans Affairs Committee, which had logged over 700 similar HOA-related flag suppression cases in the past 5 years. I contacted the Civil Rights Legal Defense Center, where I once trained junior federal investigators. Within 48 hours, I got a response. Subject: HUD case number 3749. Federal review initiated. HOA flag restriction. One line made me sit up straight. The restriction of lawful American flag display on private property may constitute a federal civil rights violation, particularly when paired with intimidation, discrimination, or retaliatory behavior. Karen had no idea. She still thought she was winning, because that morning she sent 2 so-called community safety officers to my front yard. No uniforms, no badges, just blue dress shirts, baseball caps, and a wrench. Linda called from the window, voice trembling. "John, they're taking down our flagpole." I stepped outside, turned on my camera. "What are you doing?" One of them turned away, avoiding eye contact. "Miss Simmons asked us to remove non-compliant fixtures." "Non-compliant? My flagpole?" I walked closer, voice steady. "You know this is private property, right? Do you have a written order, a witness, or just a verbal command from a woman with imaginary authority?" The other man began to back away. "I don't know. We were just told to do this." I said nothing else. Just held up my old FBI badge, not to intimidate, but to warn. You're 1 second away from committing recorded trespass. They left, fast. But I wasn't done. That night, I sent the full footage to my HUD case investigator. I attached a memo. Subject: unlawful coercion by HOA organization against federally compliant resident. Aggravating factor: discriminatory behavior toward veterans and former government agents. 3 days later, I received the confirmation. Karen Simmons and the Willow Pines HOA board were officially placed under federal civil rights investigation. But that wasn't even the hardest blow. I discovered something that even made me raise an eyebrow. Karen had been editing the HOA bylaws in Microsoft Word. No official publication, no community vote, no meeting minutes, just .docx files marked, updated by K. Simmons for uniformity. I'd seen small-town mayors pull this to rewrite housing codes. I'd seen local officials manipulate this trick to adjust property taxes. But a HOA Karen forging regulations to suppress the national flag? This was prime material for a class action lawsuit, and I knew 3 attorneys who'd be thrilled to take it on. Are you ready to see how Karen reacts when she finds out she's under federal investigation? Because in the next part, she'll make the single dumbest move since taking office. She publicly declares, "I do not recognize the jurisdiction of the federal government," in a live-streamed HOA meeting. Karen declared she doesn't recognize the federal government, and the entire neighborhood watched her self-destruct. The HOA meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m. on Friday inside the Willow Pines Community Center. Karen had marked attendance as mandatory for all homeowners. I chuckled when I read the invitation. Agenda: reaffirming community standards and emphasizing appropriate values. I knew exactly what she was going to do. Try to bury her abuse of power under a speech laced with fear and deception. But this time, she wouldn't be speaking uninterrupted. I arrived early. I brought with me a 20-page file, federal complaint paperwork, screenshots of emails, video captures, and a small American flag pinned to my shirt pocket. Not large, not flashy, just enough to remind everyone I wasn't defending just my own rights. I was defending a principle. The room was packed. Over 80 households showed up. Extra folding chairs lined the walls. People stood in the aisles. Neighbors who once remained silent now wore small pins. Mr. Henderson, a 75-year-old veteran, held a printed copy of the 2005 Flag Act. The Martinez family, fined for flying a Puerto Rican flag, sat front row, holding a sign, "Our flag, our right." It felt more like a public tribunal than a homeowners meeting. Karen stepped onto the podium, dressed in black, same iPad, same scanning gaze, but this time she was taut, like a violin string near snapping. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we're here to clarify some misunderstandings regarding our community regulations." Misunderstandings? I clenched my fist. Linda placed a hand gently on my shoulder. She knew I was trying to stay composed. Karen went on. "As the HOA board, we reserve the right to maintain standards that reflect our community's values, and sometimes certain symbols, however historic, can create division." Murmurs rippled through the room. Mr. Henderson stood. "I lost a leg in Fallujah. That flag Mr. Keller flies? It's the reason I survived. It doesn't divide anyone. It reminds us why we endure." Applause erupted. Karen frowned. "I'm not here to debate emotions. I'm here to state that the HOA is a self-governing body. We are not subject to federal law regarding property displays." The room fell silent. I stepped forward, calmly. I opened my file. "What you just said, under current law, is completely false." I held up the HUD documentation. "Karen Simmons, you are under federal investigation for violating constitutional rights. Your statement just now, not subject to federal law, has been recorded and will be submitted to the case officer." Karen stepped back. I meant it in terms of local governance." "No, you just denied the authority of federal law in front of 80 witnesses. I'm recording this. And also, this HOA meeting is being live streamed to our community Facebook page. 300 people are watching live." That was the breaking point. Karen froze. Her lips trembled. Her hands gripped the podium like it was the only thing holding her together. Then another voice rose. Vice President Allen stood. "I refuse to be part of this. I resign, and I motion for a vote to remove the entire current HOA board, effective immediately." The room exploded with applause. Tom, a retired firefighter, called out, "All in favor of removing Karen Simmons and forming an interim board?" Dozens of hands shot up. Unanimous. I wasn't the instigator. I was the catalyst. Within 10 minutes, Karen was removed from office. Within 24 hours, all investigation materials were handed to HUD attorneys and local press. Within a week, Karen received a summons from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Georgia. And within a month, Karen left Willow Pines. No one saw her off. See that? Freedom isn't something handed to you. It's something you have to stand up for, even when the person threatening it wears a skirt and holds an HOA clipboard. But the story's not over yet, because behind Karen's downfall, I uncovered something even darker. Our HOA was being manipulated by a real estate development firm trying to evict residents who didn't fit the community image. Karen was just the surface. What I uncovered next chilled me to the bone. Our entire neighborhood was being quietly sold off, one home at a time. 1 week after Karen was removed, I thought it was over. My American flag still flew on the front porch. Mr. Henderson came by with coffee every morning again. Willow Pines felt like a real community again. Peaceful, respectful, united. But then I got an anonymous call. Middle-aged male voice. Hoarse. Quiet. "Mr. Keller, you haven't seen the whole picture. Karen was just a pawn. You should check the old land records. Look who's trying to buy out Willow Pines." Click. I'd heard voices like that before, back in my FBI days. The kind of people who warn you once, because they may not get a second chance. So I started digging. I pulled the public property transfer map, and I saw something off. 14 homes in Willow Pines had already been marked under contract, all by a development firm named Pinecrest Urban Holdings. The strange part? Some of those homes were never listed. Some owners didn't even know their properties were marked in a community redevelopment strategy. I uncovered a draft document. Phase 1, acquisition of socially non-integrated parcels, retirees, military families, fixed-income households. Sounds polite, but I knew exactly what it meant. Remove the people you can't control and turn this place into a gated luxury compound for the ultra-wealthy. Turns out, Karen was once a real estate agent. Her husband, rarely mentioned, was regional director for Pinecrest. This wasn't about the flag anymore. This was a coordinated takeover, strategic, profitable and riddled with deception. And our HOA, the very body meant to protect us, had been turned into a weapon for systemic displacement. So I formed a task force, the Willow Pines Investigative Team. Me, John Keller, former FBI special agent; Linda, my wife, retired teacher and text analysis wizard; Tom Henderson, Marine vet and the steady right hand; Miss Allen, former HOA VP turned whistleblower; and a crew of neighbors whose voices Karen once tried to silence. We gathered evidence. Emails between Karen and Pinecrest HOA funds secretly transferred to a development consulting firm. Photos of private meetings at Karen's office captured by a neighbor's camera. Then we sent the full dossier to the right places: the U.S. Attorney's Office, Northern District of Georgia; the Department of Housing and Urban Development; local media; and an investigative journalist from Fox 5 Atlanta whom I'd once worked with in the bureau. Within 72 hours, subpoenas were issued. Pinecrest, under federal investigation for unlawful property acquisition schemes. All contracts frozen. HOA financial accounts frozen. Subpoenaed for testimony, no longer in power, but not beyond consequence. 3 months later, I stood at the heart of the Willow Pines Community Center, once Karen's stage of control. Now, there was no board table, no podium, just a massive American flag raised in the center lawn. We named it the Community Liberty Flag. I addressed my neighbors. They thought we'd stay silent. They thought we'd accept fake rules, bogus violations, and fear tactics. But they forgot something. This is a country built by people who don't back down. Every home here is a fortress. Every flag is a statement. And every citizen can become a defender of freedom when called. Karen thought she was the wall, but in the end, she was just the weed blown away by the wind of community. But there's one more truth, more important than all the rest. Freedom isn't an idea, it's an action. And here in Willow Pines, that action started with one man who raised a flag and refused to bow. Have you ever dealt with an overreaching HOA? Ever been told the American flag is divisive? Then share your story, because silence only makes the wrong people louder. Freedom doesn't come pre-hung on every front porch. It is raised, defended, and sometimes reclaimed by our own hands. I never imagined that at 57, after nearly 3 decades chasing criminals for the federal government, the biggest battle of my life would begin with an American flag on my own front lawn. I didn't need a weapon. I didn't need my FBI badge. I just needed truth, the law, and a community willing to stand up. They thought they were powerful HOAs, but in the end, they were just Karens fueled by the silence of good people. And when good people finally speak up, every Karen backs down. What about you? Have you ever been fined by an HOA for flying a flag? Threatened for showing your patriotism? Or seen veterans disrespected by so-called aesthetic guidelines? Share your story in the comments. We read every word and we amplify your voice. Because every comment is a declaration. Freedom is not permission. It's a non-negotiable right. If you believe no one has the right to stop you from flying the American flag on your own home, drop a flag emoji in the comments. You're not just watching a story, you're part of a movement. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because there are hundreds of stories still coming about so-called powerful Karens and the everyday Americans who refuse to bow. And if you want to see HOAs fall, justice rise, and Old Glory waving proudly on every rooftop, like this video. Share it and help us spread the spirit of freedom. I'm John Keller, just a man who wanted to raise the flag he once fought to protect. And if this story inspired you, remember this. You don't have to be a federal agent to stand up to injustice. You just have to be a citizen who says, not here, not ever. Thanks for watching to the very end. We'll see you in the next episode, where justice needs no permission and Karen no longer rules. HOA Stories, where community fights back.